Eugenie Bouchard snubs Coco Gauff big time to favor Jessica Pegula in bold Indian Wells prediction. Former WTA pro Eugenie Bouchard has backed world number 5 Jessica Pegula over Coco Gauff for the Indian Wells Open, which starts on Monday. Bouchard joined former ATP pros on the latest Tennis Channel broadcast, where they discussed their picks for the WTA 1000 event in Indian Wells, California. The Canadian picked the reigning Dubai Open champion over the defending Roland Garros champion to do well in Indian Wells, citing her imperious form and consistent run at tournaments over the past 6 months. Jess has been so consistent in recent tournaments and is coming off an impressive win at the Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Championships. She may be dealing with a knee injury, but hopefully that is more a function of just how much she's played to start the season, and not a bigger issue going forward, Bouchard said. She has historically posted stronger results at the Miami Open, but the Indian Wells Tennis Garden's famous gritty courts should be advantageous to her high-percentage game, she added. Fellow panelists Nick Monroe and Brett Haber agreed with Bouchard's analysis, backing Pegula to have a better run at Indian Wells than the two-time Grand Slam champion. While Bouchard backed Jessica Pegula, some other pros rallied behind Coco Gauff. Former ATP pros Sam Querrey and Paul Annacone went the other way and backed Gauff to find her form on court in the Indian Wells Open. The 21-year-old American had a disappointing start to 2026, marred by inconsistent performances, but Querrey and Annacone feel she will bounce back at Indian Wells. She played great in Dubai, even in the match she lost to Svitolina in the semifinals. She's never won this event, so I think that could be extra motivation. These courts clearly play to her strengths. A gritty, high-bouncing court can only help her forehand and should give her extra zip on her serve, Querrey said. I do think Emma Navarro will have a good tournament, but Coco is due for a big run at a top-tier tournament, and her athleticism on these courts should be a perfect fit, Annacone said. The main draw begins on Monday, with many of the top seeds receiving byes in the first round. As the desert sun begins to settle over BNP Paribas Open, the air at Indian Wells carries its usual mix of dust, destiny, and debate. Palm trees sway lazily beyond the practice courts, but inside the tennis world, nothing is calm. Predictions are flying. Allegiances are forming. And into that swirl steps Eugenie Bouchard, never one to whisper when she can make a headline. This time, her words landed like a clean backhand winner down the line. In a bold pre-tournament prediction, Bouchard favored Jessica Pegula over Coco Gauff to make the deeper run at Indian Wells. To some, it was just analysis. To others, it was a snub. In tennis, where margins are measured in millimeters and narratives in megaphones, it was gasoline on desert fire. The weight of a prediction. Indian Wells is not just another tournament. Often called the fifth slam, it is a proving ground. The hard courts are slower, the bounce is higher, and patience is rewarded. Champions here are not accidental. They are constructed, point by point, rally by rally. So when Bouchard cast her vote for Pegula, she wasn't tossing a coin. She was making a stylistic argument. Pegula's game is built on geometry and discipline. She does not overwhelm with theatrics. She suffocates with precision. Her ground strokes carve steady patterns into the court like a sculptor refining marble. She absorbs pace and redirects it. She thrives in extended rallies. Indian Wells, with its gritty surface and demanding conditions, often rewards exactly that temperament. Gauff, by contrast, plays with electricity. Her speed is startling. Her defense turns desperation into offense in a single sprint. When she is locked in, she is untouchable, a blur of athleticism wrapped in belief. But electricity can flicker. And Bouchard's predictions seemed to hinge on stability over spark. It was not necessarily a dismissal of Gauff's greatness. It was a bet on consistency. Still, in the court of public opinion, nuance rarely survives intact. The shadow of stardom. Gauff is more than a player, she is a phenomenon. From teenage prodigy to Grand Slam champion, her rise has been documented in slow motion and replayed in highlight reels. Every tournament she enters carries expectation. Every match she plays feels like a referendum on her trajectory. To pick against her, especially in favor of another American, is to challenge a prevailing storyline. But Pegula has quietly built her own empire of results. Week after week, she goes deep in draws. Quarterfinals become semifinals. Semifinals become titles. She may not command the same headlines, but she commands scoreboards. Bouchard, once a teenage sensation herself, understands the burden of promise. She knows how quickly adoration can shift to scrutiny. Perhaps that perspective informed her view. Perhaps she sees in Pegula the steady pulse that survives the desert heat. Indian Wells, where styles collide. The courts at Indian Wells are unique. The bounce sits high, forcing players to strike above shoulder level. The dry air slows the ball just enough to elongate rallies. It is a tournament that tests patience as much as power. Pegula's flat, penetrating shots can redirect high-bouncing balls with calculated calm. She constructs points like an engineer drafting blueprints. Her serve may not roar, but it lands where it must. Her footwork may not dazzle, but it positions her perfectly. Gauff, meanwhile, thrives on momentum. Her forehand can explode. Her backhand can slice angles that defy geometry. And her court coverage, perhaps her greatest weapon, transforms defense into counterpunch in seconds. But Indian Wells demands discipline in shot selection. One mistimed swing can spiral into a lost game. In predicting Pegula to outperform Gauff, Bouchard was making a subtle claim that desert tennis rewards restraint over rush. The psychology of preference. There is something fascinating about former players making predictions. They see the sport from the inside out. They know what it feels like when confidence wavers by a fraction. They recognize body language, practice rhythms, the tilt of a head between points. Bouchard's own career arc, meteoric rise, intense spotlight, hard-earned resilience, gives her insight into pressure. And Gauff carries enormous pressure. The world expects brilliance from her. Pegula, though highly ranked, sometimes slips under that particular microscope. Expectation is invisible weight. Perhaps Bouchard believes Pegula carries less of it. Or perhaps she simply trusts the steadiness she sees. Either way, the prediction reframed the conversation heading into Indian Wells. Instead of asking whether Gauff would dominate, fans began asking whether Pegula might quietly outlast her. Rivalry without rivalry. What makes this storyline compelling is that Pegula and Gauff are not adversaries in the traditional sense. They share nationality. They have competed alongside each other in team events. They have spoken respectfully of one another. Yet sport thrives on comparison. When two top American players enter the same tournament, they become mirrors. Analysts compare their draws, their form, their fitness. Every round survived by one becomes a measuring stick for the other. Bouchard's prediction sharpened that comparison. It suggested a hierarchy, at least for this tournament. And hierarchies are never static.